Congressman Nathaniel Moran, who serves on 3 House committees, including the Committee on Ways and Means. He represents the 1st Congressional District of Texas. Congressman Moran, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Hi, Tony. Great to be with you tonight. Thanks for having me.
All right, let me just, how do you guys from Texas settle your differences?
Well, we got to continue to talk through the differences, and certainly when you go through the decision-making process, I tell my folks back home, I start with principles. We add to that the facts, and then you look at the application and the analysis of those facts, and then you got to make a decision. People with the same principles, looking at the same facts, can actually apply and analyze those facts a little bit differently and reach a little bit different conclusion. It doesn't mean that there's a problem in Congress. It simply means we're working through the process the way it should, and that's what's happening right now. That's what the Senate's been doing for the past week, and frankly, that's what the House was doing for an entire year before that. So I respect the differences of opinion within my colleagues. I happen to fall down on the side and the belief that this bill, though not perfect, and certainly I could pick apart a lot of provisions in this bill, particularly those that the Senate sent back to us. This bill on balance is a very pro-family, pro-faith, pro-American bill. And for us not to pass this bill, I think would be devastating to families and to the American economy in the years to come.
You know, I want to start with your kind of introductory comments, because the reason I had you and Keith on is because you are very similar. You represent districts that are very near one another. Both of you analyze things from what I would describe a biblical worldview. So it is, we can come up with differences of opinions on this bill. But let's talk about some of the elements of that the Senate changed, that Keith brought up in our conversation earlier, that he felt that he totally supports the tax cuts. I'm not sure there's a Republican that doesn't support those. His concern was it started out with 10-year defunding of Planned Parenthood. That's down to a year. It had the defunding of transgender surgeries, or treatments. That's now gone. So he said the moral components of that bill have been stripped out by the Senate.
Yeah, I agree that those provisions, I would have liked to see those provisions in there, and I'm really sorry that they were stripped out. But if we can defund Planned Parenthood for a year, that's a victory and a step in the right direction. And given all the other components of this bill and the other things that are at stake when it comes to faith and family and frankly freedom, because when we're talking about a tax bill, that's what we're talking about. And this started out in its core as a tax bill. This is not the end-all be-all decision-making tree or process for every moral matter that we have to deal with in Congress. This is at its core a bill about taxes and liberty, and I think that we need to provide that liberty back to the families, the farmers, the hardworking Americans across the state of Texas and across every state in the United States. And that will not happen if we don't pass this bill. And if we get caught up in the trees and quit looking at the forest, that could be problematic for us. I think we need to remember this is a big picture item that we need to pass for the president, for our families in the United States, and then come back and continue to work on these other things. Again, I agree wholeheartedly on the criticisms that Keith levied against what the Senate did. Wholeheartedly agree with him, but come down to the conclusion that we still need to pass this bill and continue to work on those other matters.
I think, and I think Congressman Self was pretty clear on this, that he wants to see the bill passed. He's just of the perspective that it can be improved before it is passed. Do you see that opportunity to improve the bill?
No, I don't. Quite frankly, I think that it would be a mistake for us to delay. I know that there are some that are calling for us to ease off the pressure this week and let's maybe go to conference or try to work out differences or try to somehow get the Senate revisions undone and go back to where we were. But I think at the end of the day, time is is to the benefit of those that would want to kill this bill altogether. And so to say, well, it's not a perfect bill, yeah, I agree with that. None of these pieces of legislation that are this big is a perfect bill. But if we delay it past this week, if we take the pressure off of passage this week, I think you're going to see even more problematic matters rise, and it's going to get even worse. We should have had the House bill. It should have been it was a better bill, and I'd like to see the Senate just take ours up and be done with it. They didn't. They made it worse. If we come back and we try to conference again, I think it's going to get even worse, and we're going to have more voices against it, and then you're not going to see any passage of this bill, and that would be devastating to families across the United States.
I would agree that the bill needs to get across the line. I do think there's some things that the administration can do to address some of these issues from a policy standpoint through executive action, not necessarily EOs, but even policies when it comes to Planned Parenthood or the transgender. I think the Department of Health and Human Services could promulgate rules addressing Medicaid funds going to transgender procedures. So I do think there's more than one way to skin a legislative cat, if you will. Let me ask you this question, Congressman, because this is what I get. And I've spent a lot of my time defending members of Congress because I do think we're making progress. It's slow. But there are some saying, how is it we're still funding Planned Parenthood when the Republicans are controlling the White House, the House, and the Senate?
Yeah, it is astounding to me because what Planned Parenthood is doing across this nation is atrocious. You know as well as anybody how ardently pro-life I am and the stance we've taken, and want to continue to push back against the horrible nature of the services that are provided by Planned Parenthood to cut the lives short of so many across this land. And so I don't understand, frankly, how some of our colleagues on this side of the aisle that claim to have a biblical perspective and biblical worldview could support that kind of activity. But we're going to take every effort to push back on that. And this is a step in the right direction. By the way, I agree with you. The executive, I'd like to see the executives take more action, and I hope that they will do that in light of what the Senate has done in the instance of the bill. But the bill language is the bill language at this point, and we do not want to cut off our nose to spite our face.
Nathaniel, I want to thank you for joining us, and I do want to validate that you are a strong pro-life conservative member of Congress. We're grateful for you and thankful, not only for you coming on the program, but thankful for your service on the Hill.